Hi, my name is Beth, and this is my January 2024 Reading Journal Wrap-Up. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm starting with my January cover page. I don't do anything super elaborate with my cover pages. I mostly just use them to divide up my reading a little bit. In the past, I used to add labels to my cover page to quickly see which books were read in that month, but honestly, it was one of my least favorite things to add in my entire journal. So this year, I'm trying out just not using them, and I think that I like it, but I'll have to wait a few more months before I really settle on anything. I'm starting by cutting out 2 pieces of scrapbook paper to act as the background for these pages. I used my Kobo that desperately needs to be charged to measure out the paper. It's not the most conventional, but it works. Last year, I started adding quotes to my monthly cover pages in lieu of a favorite quotes spread. I didn't think that I would be able to fill an entire spread with quotes, but I figured that at the very least, I could manage to find 12 quotes that I liked enough to use on cover pages. So even though I'm ditching the labels, I am keeping the quotes. They always take a while to write out, but I like looking back on the quotes that I chose. I have some criteria for the quotes I pick. I choose quotes that I think are really beautiful, quotes that I think really represent the book that it's from, quotes that I find relatable, or quotes that I simply find funny. So I apologize in advance for any ridiculous quotes that I choose for the future of this journal. I'm writing out the quote with a brush pen marker from Nota. I'm honestly not that familiar with using actual brush pens. Last year, I used Crayola Supertips for all of my headers and book titles, and so I'm a lot more used to them. And I'll be honest, I don't love how I wrote out the quote for this month, but obviously I'll get better with practice. I didn't know how to do any kind of lettering when I started using a reading journal, and some of my writing in my first year of journaling is creative, to say the least. So I would call this a win nonetheless. I like to choose quotes from books I've read in that particular year, but since I hadn't read anything at the beginning of January, I chose to use a quote from a book I read in December of 2023. The quote I chose was, "I lost track of time. For 2 hours, there were books involved." And this is from The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson, which is the second book in Mistborn Era 1. I really related to this quote for obvious reasons. And that is it for the monthly cover page. The first book that I read in January was Butter Honey Pig Bread by Francesca Equiasi. It's an adult literary fiction novel about 3 women, a mother, Kamberi Nachi, and her adult twin daughters, Kehinde and Taye. And it's kind of a generational tale as it follows the mother in her late teens as she explores marriage and motherhood, one daughter in university and her early career life, and the other daughter in both the past and the present day. This book is about love and life and loss and what that looks like for each woman in this family. A lot of this story is seeing how in present day there are tensions in all of their relationships with each other, and as we look back into their pasts, we see how they ended up here. I'm sorry if this description is a little bit vague. This book is very character-driven, and it's hard to put into words what exactly the plot is because the plot is not really the focal point of this book. I randomly came across this book a few years ago on Goodreads, and I was immediately drawn to it because of its title. I remember adding it to my want to read list, but then proceeding to forget about it for a while, which I feel like is unfortunately normal reading behavior for me. Until I saw it in an indie bookstore in December and figured it was a sign for me to finally pick it up. And I'm very happy that I did because I really enjoyed this book. Like I said, the story is very character heavy, and it's mostly about the developing relationships between a mother and her daughters, and these women felt very realistic to me. At times, I forgot that I was reading fiction because the story felt almost like a memoir. The choices and the paths that these characters go down seem genuine and plausible. Admittedly, I did find the two daughters' storylines to be more intriguing than the mother's. There was a supernatural element to the mother's storyline that I just didn't find as important as maybe the book was setting it up to be. But generally speaking, I thought that all three stories had strengths and moments of intrigue. The writing was beautiful and lush and very in your face. This book is not shy in any way. It wants to be in your face. The story takes place in a few different cities, in Lagos, Nigeria, London, England, and Montreal, Canada. I think that the locations help further establish the divide between the women because they are both physically spread out and mentally in different places in their lives. Kamberi Nachi, the mother, is blossoming into adulthood in Lagos. Taye is trying to understand herself and her place in the world and runs to London to find it. And Kehinde is in Montreal, discovering what love can be despite traumatic experiences associated with both Lagos and her sister. I mentioned in my 2024 reading journal setup video that I don't normally make my book spreads match the book itself, and this spread is no different. I've gone for this purple and green fairy aesthetic, which does not relate to the book in any way at all. I just wanted to use these stickers because I thought they were nice. All of the fairy, butterfly, and Pantone-esque stickers are from the stationery shop Ikigai Papier. The green grid washi tape is also from them. The washi tape, though, was part of their 2023 advent calendar, so it's unlikely that that particular washi tape will be available still, but they have other washi tape on their shop as well. The only thing that's from a different store is the bottle sticker in the bottom right corner. That is from a stationery shop called the Aesthetics Studio. I'll link both shops in the description box. I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about this book, which is really unfortunate because I thought it was excellent. It won the Globe and Mail Best Book of 2020. I've only read one other book that won that award before, but I also really enjoyed that one too. It was I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. Maybe I just need to pick up more Globe and Mail Best Book winners because clearly something is working. I gave Butter Honey Pig Bread 4 stars, and I would highly recommend it if you enjoy family stories and character-heavy narratives. The next book that I read was The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This is a book that I'd been meaning to read for a while now. I read The Night Circus a few years ago, and I absolutely loved it. I felt like I finally understood the hype that everyone was talking about. I just completely fell in love with that book, and naturally, I was very intrigued about this one. I read The Night Circus after The Starless Sea came out, but I remember when everyone was trying to get their hands on a copy of this book. And I also remember that despite a lot of people enjoying The Night Circus, the reactions to The Starless Sea were quite mixed. Even though I had that knowledge going in, I tried to take in this book with an open mind, but unfortunately, this one just didn't do it for me. And I'm disappointed because I really loved The Night Circus. I wanted to be one of those people who liked both books, but I guess I'm not. The Starless Sea is about a young man named Zachary Ezra Rollins, and the book will not let you forget that that is his name. And he finds this mysterious book at his campus library, and upon reading it, he discovers that he is in the book, despite it appearing as though it's fiction. And from the book, he learns that as a child, he missed an opportunity to go to this mysterious, magical place called the Starless Sea. So now, as a grad student, he ventures off on this quest to uncover the mysteries of the book and find the Starless Sea. I felt like this book had an interesting premise, but it just fell short in a lot of ways for me. Zachary, for example, felt kind of boring to me. I didn't dislike him, but he felt a bit too ordinary to be a protagonist. I liked that he was interested in gaming and was working towards writing a thesis on it, but I wanted that gaming identity to be more present. He never made any decisions with gaming logic in mind. It was just a detail about him that lived in the background outside of a few Zelda references. Also, this is not relevant, but I pictured the actor who played Dean in the Harry Potter films, Alfred Enoch, as Zachary. So if someone goes on to adapt this book, I think he'd be a great option for Zachary. I don't know if there's like an official or generally agreed upon fan casting for this book, but I would definitely petition for Alfred Enoch to be Zachary. Anyway, I found Zachary's love interest, Dorian, to be a lot more interesting. He didn't know everything, but he had more information than Zachary. He was secretive and mysterious, but even still, I had some problems with their relationship. I felt like they didn't spend enough time together to really establish a proper relationship. I feel like I don't know why they like each other. That's never really explored. I appreciate that it was more than just a love at first sight situation, but they were constantly being separated, and so it didn't feel like they actually had enough time to establish love, let alone simply just date each other. This book is told through back and forth narratives, so every other chapter follows Zachary, and the rest typically follow stories from the book Zachary found in the library or books similar to it. While I think this is interesting, the biggest downfall is that there are a lot of stories to remember. Obviously, you know while reading them that they are important somehow and that they'll come into play, but the book makes you wait a really long time and it's hard to remember them. And the stories aren't necessarily told in chronological order, so it can be tricky to follow the storyline. This book reminded me a lot of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind in that way. The constant back and forth, not knowing what happened and when, the manic pixie dream girl. I don't know, it was just a lot. I'm decorating this spread with stickers from a shop called StationeryHabitat. I've been saving this specific sticker sheet for this book because it's all ocean and beach things, and the book is called The Starless Sea. Now, technically, the sea in this book doesn't look like a typical body of water, but you know what? It's the thought that counts. The larger stickers that I bought were originally from a sticker pack that I got from Notebook Therapy, but I don't think that they sell this sticker pack anymore or sticker packs like it anymore, but if I can find something similar online, I will link it below. I'm also using one of Notebook Therapy's washi tapes. It was from their Gentle Giant collection, as well as a few washi tapes that came in a bundle from Hobby Lobby. I ended up giving The Starless Sea 2 stars because I just wanted more from the story. I wanted more plot and I wanted more characterization, and unfortunately, the book just didn't deliver that for me. The next book I read was Bunny by Mona Awad. I was so excited to read this book because it seemed like it was right up my alley. a dark academia novel where the dark is really dark and the academia is an integral part of the narrative. Generally speaking, I think that there are two different types of dark academia. The first is where the academia portion of the book is connected to the narrative. The Secret History does this really well, and so does If We Were Villains. And the other kind of dark academia is where the academia itself serves little purpose to the story and acts more as a setting for the book. I would say that Bunny is more like the first example. However, unlike with The Secret History and If We Were Villains, I did not enjoy Bunny. It has been so hard to put into words how I feel about this book. The more I think about it, the more confused I get about the entire thing. So, yeah, I don't know. This one is just a weird one. Bunny is a book about a grad student named Samantha who is doing her master's in creative writing at this fictional school called Warren University. She is one of 5 women in her program. The other 4 are these very girly and childish women who refer to themselves as a collective known as Bunny. Samantha has a lot of dislike towards the union that is Bunny, but at the same time, she seeks validation from them because she feels isolated in their program. The women in Bunny feel very connected. They all enjoy and respect each other's work. They are always hugging each other and they spend time together. And Samantha is clearly an outcast from the posse that is Bunny. But things start to change when Samantha is invited to a gathering hosted by Bunny called Smut Salon. And slowly but surely, Samantha starts to become more integrated with Bunny, and she starts to see the further interests that these other women have towards their creative work. I don't really know how much more to say. There's a lot more happening in this book, but I feel like if I mention anything else, it verges on spoiling a lot of really big information. I'm primarily using stickers from Marigona Suli Art for this spread. Initially, I was upset that I couldn't find any stationery in my collection that had bunnies on them, so I picked these ones and didn't really think anything of it. But as I was setting up the spread, I noticed that there's a little tiny bunny in the back basket on the bike, so clearly it was meant to be. The square stickers are from Ikigai Papier, and the mushroom washi tape is from that same Hobby Lobby collection. The labels are from an Etsy seller called StampedandSealedCo, and since I haven't mentioned it yet, the star rating stickers that I use are from an Etsy seller called thePrairiePlanner. I used to draw all the stars myself by hand, but this is so much easier and looks way nicer. So why didn't I like this book? Bunny is a book that asked a lot of questions, but barely offered any answers. There are a number of plot points and details that get introduced that either get completely unresolved, or if they are resolved, it's in a way that only invites more question. They talk about sex and eroticism, but their understanding of these things is incredibly base level. These women are supposed to be in their mid-20s, but they don't behave that way, and this is never explained. There's also what I can only describe as a fantastical element to the book, but it's never explained how it's achieved. Like, is it magic? Is it science? I'm sure some people might argue that the how isn't important, but I would disagree. Because if it's magic, I think that it introduces a whole new way of interpreting both Bunny and Samantha. There's also a thing with Samantha's best friend, Ava. Towards the end of the novel, there is some information revealed about Ava that seems to contradict with events from earlier in the book. It introduces a plethora of problems with the plot and the overall validity of the story. I am overall upset that I didn't like this one. I think that if you don't care about analyzing what you read and you just want the vibes, then you might enjoy Bunny. But I gave Bunny 1.5 stars. I can usually handle weird and over the top, but this one was just too confusing for me to understand. The last book I read in January was The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This was my first forte into Cormac McCarthy's works, and I went into The Road knowing very little about it or how McCarthy writes. I will say, though, that after finishing this book, I feel as though I was incredibly misinformed about The Road. Like I said, I knew nothing about the actual plot of this book going in, but I had heard people talk about it online, and the general vibe that I got about this book was that it was one of the most messed up books out there. I got the impression that The Road was going to traumatize me, and as weird as this sounds, I was kind of looking forward to that. I have a complicated relationship with horror as a media genre. I don't watch a lot of horror movies, and I refuse to play horror games. But I will say that I adore horror literature. It's easily one of my favorite genres to read. So after finishing this book, I'm mostly left confused as to why people say this is such a twisted story, because I really couldn't disagree more. The Road is set in a post-apocalyptic version of America where resources are incredibly scarce and danger is right around every corner. The story follows a nameless man and his son as they travel south to try and find a warmer climate for a better chance at survival. And honestly, that's pretty much it. Not a lot happens in this book. It's very slow and relatively uneventful. It's a lot of walking and feeling hungry and huddling together so that they stay warm throughout the night. It's also just a lot of them constantly being scared that they will be attacked and killed. This book is very reminiscent of other apocalypse or survival stories, so if you're familiar with I Am Legend by Richard Matheson, or The Stand by Stephen King, or even The Last of Us, you might recognize a lot of similarities. Something that all of these stories have, and the thing that I think is rooted in all of them, is the persistence for life. It's hope that humanity can thrive. However, unlike the other examples where vampires and viruses and zombies are the cause for everything, The Road never offers an explanation as to why the apocalypse has happened. And quite frankly, I don't think that it's that important. This story isn't about the why. No one's trying to fix it. They're just trying to survive it. When I said that I don't care to match my spreads to the books, I really meant it with this one. The Road is a dark and depressing story, so naturally I decided to decorate this spread with very cute frogs. The small frogs and the frog tape stickers are from an Etsy seller called StarJoyStudio, although I'm not sure if they sell these specific sticker sheets anymore. The frog with the floaty is from her fairy shop on Etsy, and the frog with the dandelion is from StationeryHabitat on Etsy. Both of those stickers were freebies though, so again, I'm not 100% sure if they sell those specific stickers, but all of the shops will be linked in the description. While I personally wouldn't describe The Road as the most twisted book I've ever read, I do think that it is deeply sad, like a lot of other survival stories. It invites a lot of conversation about human nature and what it means to be a good or a bad person. Like, can you even be a good person in a world where joy and hope and all of your resources are gone? I ended up giving The Road 3 stars. It's a slow-moving book, and McCarthy's writing style isn't always the most digestible, but I found it to be very thought-provoking and unique in its approach. And that is it for my January reading journal wrap-up. Overall, I think January was an alright reading month for me. I'm happy that I was able to read 4 books, but obviously I didn't really love all of them. I did make really good progress with my TBR though. 3 of the 4 books that I read this month were from my TBR, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm also really happy with how all of these spreads came out. This is also my very first monthly wrap-up, so thank you very much for joining me. But until next month, thank you very much for watching. Have a great day.